Okay. Hello and welcome to another occurrence of Resilience Reimagined, the speakers series of the Dean of the Embry-Riddle Worldwide College of Arts and Sciences. In case you have any doubt, the Dean, that's me, Alexander Siedschlag. It's great to host you, and I'm looking forward to welcoming our speaker of today in just a moment. Resilience Reimagined provides an opportunity to join us and our esteemed guests once a month to discuss fresh perspectives on a broad range of resilience topics from a variety of field sectors, nationally, internationally, and even globally. This exploration connects the Embry-Riddle Worldwide College of Arts and Sciences. And if you want to learn more, if you don't know us already that well, you want to learn more, I'm posting 2 links in the chat. So this exploration in Resilience Reimagined connects our Embry-Riddle Worldwide College of Arts and Sciences endeavors to our strategic vision of being a true destination college for multidisciplinary studies and impactful collaborative research as we strive to transform our students and the broader community into responsive, responsible global citizens. The National Preparedness Goal, as first formulated in 2011 by the US Department of Homeland Security, aims at a secure and resilient nation with the capabilities across the whole community to prevent, protect against, mitigate, respond to, and recover from the threats and hazards that pose the greatest risks. Annual national preparedness reports have been evaluating the progress, our nation's progress towards that goal. National preparedness reports have been concluding that resilience cannot be achieved without equitable consideration for and participation of all community members, and the reports have also underscored the need to bring national resilience capability targets closer to community goals at the local level. And that perfectly connects with today's occurrence and our speaker, Dennis Caliyo, who is going to talk about Mission Ready, how Embry-Riddle, 9/11, and a life of service led me to the Salvation Army. So this very important occurrence of today also has a career readiness, career preparedness talk aspect to it, and we are very grateful for that. Dennis is a nationally respected leader in emergency management, homeland security, and disaster services, currently serving as the Director of Emergency Disaster Services for the Salvation Army's Golden State Division, which is California. He has over 3 decades of experience spanning federal, state, military, and nonprofit sectors. His global perspective was shaped early in his career through military service, which included his role as Information Operations Officer in Baghdad, Iraq, from 2008 to 2009. From 2009 to 2011, Dennis served as a watch officer at the National Military Command Center at the Pentagon, which is the nation's premier emergency operations center. Later on, he also served as the planning and operations officer in Kandahar in Afghanistan. Transitioning to federal service, Dennis held multiple leadership roles at FEMA, the National Emergency Management Agency, including planning section chief and executive officer to the regional administrator. Today, Dennis leads disaster operations across 18 counties in California, integrating spiritual care, community resilience, and tactical readiness. His leadership during wildfire seasons, public health emergencies, and mass displacement events has earned him recognition for both compassion and effectiveness. Thank you so much for your service, Dennis, and for taking the time to speak to us today. And you are also an alumnus of Embry-Riddle, whom we are excited to welcome back on this occasion. You hold a BA in Management, Technical Operations and Safety from Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, class of 2001. With that, Dennis, please take it away. And once again, thank you and welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining.
Thank you, Doctor. I appreciate it. I love to see everybody's smiling faces, just so that so that I can make sure you can hear me. I just need to know, do you hear me? Give me a thumbs up or give me a big smile. Wow, I see Jessica there. Janice, good to see you. And I know there's somebody from from Germany. Thanks, Courtney, for the thumbs up. Wow. And I see, Doctor, you are absorbing that nice sun by your wall there. I see that Embry-Riddle. You have my heart. I'm unfortunately in beautiful San Francisco, and I'm in my home right now. I get an opportunity to work, but it's really cold here. I live in one of these old homes. It was built right after the turn of the century. A little bit about myself and where I'm living at here. It was built right after the turn of the century, so it doesn't have central heat. So if I go through my little spill here and if I'm shivering and I'm drinking hot chocolate or hot tea rather, please excuse me. But good to see you all. Good morning, everyone. It is a pleasure and honor to be here to come back after all these years, and I'm very excited. I'm so excited that I may talk too fast. So if I talk too fast, I need you to just say do this number, and that means I know that my tempo is too fast. Okay. It is an honor and it is a privilege to be here today, especially being an alumni for the Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. But someone whose life was forever changed and shaped by this university, by service, and by a calling that continues to evolve. Some people choose a career, others are chosen by a moment. For me, that moment was 9/11. I was a student here finishing my degree, and I was also serving in the United States Army. That day didn't just change the world, it defined my mission. It turned theory into reality, it turned preparation into purpose. Today, I want to share a journey that began in the shadow of a tragedy and led me to a life of service. From Embry-Riddle to the battlefield, from FEMA to the Salvation Army. And through it all, one theme remained constant, and that is being mission ready. So here you go, guys. I chose Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University because I wanted to be part of something bigger than myself. Aviation, discipline, it all spoke to me. But what I didn't expect was how deeply this place would shape my mindset. I was balancing academics with active duty military service. I'd be in class one day and in uniform the next. That duality taught me discipline, time management, and most importantly, how to lead with integrity. Embry-Riddle didn't just teach me how to lead, it taught me why leadership matters. Then came 9/11. I graduated in 2001, just months after the attack. And I remember that morning vividly, not as a soldier, not as a student, but as a new father. I was at home tending to my 3-month-old baby boy when I turned on the TV and saw the second plane crash into the World Trade Center. And in that moment, it hit me, not just the horror of what was happening, but the realization that my son was being born into a different world, a world that had changed in an instant, a world that would never be the same. For those who don't remember 9/11, it was our Pearl Harbor. It was the day that changed everything. The day we realized that homeland was no longer a sanctuary, that terrorism wasn't just that happened over there, it was here. It was real and it was personal. Nearly 3,000 lives were lost in a single morning. First responders ran into buildings that others were running out of. Families were shattered. The skyline of New York and the psyche of America was forever altered. But out of the devastation came something powerful: unity, resolve, and a new mission. Homeland Security, as we know it today, was born out of 9/11. The Department of Homeland Security didn't exist before that day. FEMA was reorganized. Intelligence and reconstruction, emergency management was no longer just about hurricanes and earthquakes. It was about terrorism, cyber threats, and biological attacks. For those of us in uniform, it was a calling to action. For those of us in emergency management, it was a paradigm shift. That day of service was real. It wasn't just about duty, it was about people, families, communities, our nation. It launched me into a career of service, first in uniform, then in leadership, and it is why I stand before you today and still committed to being mission ready. After graduating from Embry-Riddle and serving through the early years of the global war on terror, I continued my military career with assignments that shaped not only my leadership style, but a global perspective. In 2007, I deployed to Baghdad, Iraq. I served as the information chief of operations during a critical time in the country's history. Iraq was preparing for the nation's election, and our mission was to support the emerging government in building trust and confidence with its people. Stationed at the heart of the coalition operation, I managed strategic communications, intelligence, coordinating, and operations, helping shape the narrative and operational tempo during one of the most complex phases of the Iraqi conflict. After returning from Iraq, I was assigned to the Pentagon, where I served on the Joint Staff under Admiral Mullins. I worked within the National Military Command Center, the nation's premier emergency management center, monitoring global events 24/7 and supporting high-level decision-making. I was part of a newly formed National Joint Operations Intelligence Center, where I served as a current operations officer and later as the executive officer to the director. I also led multi-agency collaborative working groups, coordinating efforts across federal agencies to improve information sharing and operational readiness. From 2009 to 2011, my role at the National Military Command Center evolved into real-time situational awareness across all combatant commands. I helped shape combat identification policy, led initiatives, and multinational information sharing, ensuring that our forces were not only informed but aligned. Later in 2011, I deployed back to Kandahar, Afghanistan, where I served as a planning operations officer. There, I was responsible for safeguarding over 500 VIPs and coordinating high visibility visits in active combat zones, to include the Vice President of the United States and the Secretary of Defense. These missions sharpened my skills in threat assessments, interagency coordination, and rapid decision-making process under pressure. Each of these roles, from Baghdad to the Pentagon to Kandahar, taught me leadership in crisis is not just about making decisions, it's about making the right decisions at the right time for the right reasons. The Army has taught me how to lead in chaos, but also taught me how to care in crisis. After retiring from the military, I didn't slow down. I never stayed still. I knew that service wasn't something you take off the uniform. It was something you carry forward. So I trained hard and became part of the Georgia Emergency Management Agency volunteer incident management team. I wanted to stay sharp and stay involved and stay ready to serve, especially in times of crisis. I also volunteered for Hurricane Michael, which was one of the biggest hurricanes in the Southeast. At that time, I volunteered with the city of Columbus, Georgia, where I resided, at the Emergency Disaster Council, working to help community become part of the resilient, more prepared, and more connected. I wasn't just responding to emergencies, I was helping them prevent them by building systems and relationships that could withstand unexpected events. That work led to something I didn't expect. I was invited by the city planner's office to lead a citizens advisory council for the city of Columbus. In that role, I brought together diverse voices from across the community to shape policy, improve emergency management planning, and build public trust. I was part of a grassroots leadership development, and it reminded me that resilience starts at the local level. Eventually, I transitioned into the federal service, joining the Federal Emergency Management Agency. At the Federal Emergency Management Agency, I held multiple leadership roles, including planning sections chief, and later promoted to the executive officer to the regional administrator of Region 9, which covers California, Arizona, Nevada, Hawaii, and all of the territories in the Pacific Islands. Region 9 faces an unprecedented number of fire disasters, from Camp Fire to the Tubbs Fire and beyond. I'm sure you all remember Paradise Fire, which was one of the biggest fires in California. I was there supporting multi-agency coordination, leading planning efforts, and helping communities navigate the chaos. I assisted in writing incident action plans and integrated strategic plans, implementing innovative technologies and enhancing operations and response capabilities. During the pandemic, our mission shifted overnight. We had to rethink logistics, redefine, and reimagine how we serve. I helped lead FEMA's regional continuity efforts, ensuring critical operations didn't stop even when the world did. These roles taught me what leadership is and what it's about. It's about commitment. It's about showing up even when you're no longer required to do so. After years of the military and the federal service, I found myself searching for something deeper, something that aligned not just with my skills, but with my spirit. The mission came when I joined the Salvation Army. This wasn't just a job, it was a calling. Today, I serve in the Emergency Disaster Services as a director for the Golden State Division. I led with compassion, I lead with compassion, faith, and purpose. Our footprint is wide, but not focal as far as local. And what I mean by that is we not only share our local capabilities, but we share it throughout the state. I operate in 18 counties with 25 cores. Cores are also known as churches or food banks or food extensions. And I have about 100 volunteers at any given time who will give up their time and day to help me do what I need to do to serve the community. We have canteens, emergency vans, Saturn communication. Saturn means Salvation Army Team Emergency Radio Network. They're a group of ham radio operators, and they also work in CBs and other communication devices. And a mobile kitchen that's the size of a big packing truck. We're embedded in the communities we serve. We also know the terrain. It is important to know the terrain because when you go to these events, you need to understand what the terrain is involved because you don't want to be forward and not have the proper tools to deal with the terrain. We know what people are and who they are, and we respect culture. And we also know how to respond because most of our volunteers, we put them through good training with compassion and care. The Salvation Army is more than just a relief organization. It is a movement. It's an evangelical part of the universal church of God. It is motivated by God's love and committed to meeting the human needs without discrimination. Our mission is to respond to disasters with speed, dignity, and heart. Whether it's a wildfire, flood, heat wave, or pandemic, we show up and we show up prepared. Just to mention the few things we do, we provide 8 core services. The 8 core services are food service, disaster shelter, donation management, emotional and spiritual care, emergency assistance, disaster case management, cleanup, and emergency communication. I just want to focus on emotional and spiritual care. A lot of times we think that first aid has to come as a result of a broken bone or blood or a bruise. But the fact is that when people go through disasters or they go through a hard torment part of life and they experience this, the hurt is inside of them. So we have ministers that provide these types of pastoral care and counseling, especially when somebody has witnessed somebody getting killed, like an active shooter or things of that nature. My vision is simple: build local capacity, empower volunteers, and create a culture of readiness. That means monthly engagements with readiness groups, community training, and strategic partnership with organizations like Convoy of Hope and Coalition of Emergency Feeding, and especially looking at having a dialogue with Embry-Riddle as far as teaching and also mentoring young students as well. Over 15 months since I've been with the Salvation Army, I deployed to some of the most devastating disasters across the country, from wildfire in Northern California to hurricanes in the Gulf Coast and even deep freezes in Texas. But recently, the pace has intensified and deployments have escalated. I led response efforts during the South Fork fire in New Mexico last year, where our teams provided critical feeding and emotional care support to evacuees in remote and rugged terrain. We also responded to the Boreal fire near Tehachapi. And a lot of people don't know where this is at, but it's in a place where it's one of the most beautiful parts of America, and it's a backside of Yosemite National Park. I also responded to the Southern California fire, which is the Palisade fires. As you well know, these fires and these recovery operations are still going on. And I don't want to talk politics, but when we go into these recovery operations, Salvation Army, we go in there with the heart and we just want to get things done. The most recent response was the historic Chinese campfire. You probably heard about that too. About 145 years ago, Chinese came and they helped build the railroad, and part of that camp in the backside of Tuolumne County, there was a group of Chinese camp laborers there. And 145 years ago, they settled there and they created a camp. And so Unfortunately, about a month and a half ago, fire had struck and almost devastated completely the camp there. So we're going back there and we're helping those people out, and we're part of that conversation on how to reconstruct that and how to restore and give them back dignity and hope as well. At the Golden State Division, we're also looking at new era of technology, one that is powered by grounded in compassion, where we are looking at common operating pictures. We're also looking at ArcGIS, where we can do mapping for zones and things of that nature. We're also looking at drones. Soon you'll see that Salvation Army is using drones. And what we like to do is train our volunteers in drone capacity. If some of these volunteers have that knowledge, we bring them in, and we also invite them to be part of the emergency disaster teams. By integrating these tools, we're not only replacing the human touch, we're amplifying it, making sure that the response is informed, coordinated, and deeply connected to the communities we serve. I want to talk a little bit about Saturn, the Salvation Army Team Emergency Radio Network. One of our most innovative efforts in Saturn communication. We built a ham radio network across 3 sectors. The sectors are coastal, which is the Pacific Ocean, Central Valley, which is everything from Bakersfield going up to Modesto, which is considered the breadbasket of America, then the Eastern Sierra, which is the backside of Yosemite. So I have the privilege and honor to be in one of the most beautiful, distinctive places in the world, from the Golden Gate Bridge to the Redwood Forest to Yosemite, and then to the backside of Sierras. At Golden State Division, we're not only trying to modernize things, but we're also building bridges between communities, organizations, technologies. We're connecting faith-based organizations, local nonprofit community partners into the unified movement, into one shared goal. And hopefully we'll get Embry-Riddle involved with our mission as well, so that we can support your mission. Readiness, response, and recovery is what we're about. But we don't do this alone. Our strength comes from our relationships with VOADs, again, Red Cross, Office of Emergency Management, and FEMA partners and partners like yourselves. So here are the lessons that I've learned. The 7 lessons. Know your terrain and community. Adapt to geographical and culture sensitivity. And we'll start with geography. Deserts, mountains are very important. So you just can't go to the fire. You got to understand what it means to go through those deserts and mountains. You got to be prepared. Tribal lands. Even though we have a compassion, we have a heart to want to help people, we also have to be respectful for their grounds. We have to go through their village. We have to go through their chieftains, and we have to be very respectful. We've learned that the hard way. We go there and we help them out, but in reality, there was no trust and there was no confidence. So we try to build those trust and confidence during blue skies, and we do that continuously. Build local capacity before the crisis. Oftentimes, you always hear, it's always good to know people before the crisis. And so having 18 counties, part of my job is going on the road and building those relationships, talking to communities, talking to emergency managers, talking to schools, and just letting them know what we do and build that relationship. And even if it means having to break bread, I believe the greatest deal on earth was made was when you had one guy and he invited 12 people, 12 other men, and he broke bread and he had a glass of wine. That was the greatest deal that was ever made. So that's my mantra. You go out and you break bread. Number 3 is communication is everything. We talk about that. We can't overemphasize that. What happens, the cell phone towers go down. It's not if, but when. That's why we have Saturn. That's why we have to have CBs. That's why we have to go back to copper wire, or we have to go to just plain, flag signals. But those are important. Communication is everything. We can't overemphasize that. Be flexible and resourceful. Something we forget to teach, especially our young folks. You take away a cell phone from them, and all of a sudden they get a temper tantrum. Being flexible. I laugh about that, but every time I see a volunteer, the first thing I ask is, are you flexible and are you resourceful? And they look at me like, what do you mean? I said, are you able to shift from one place and go to the other? Are you resourceful? If I ask you to do something, are you able to say, I can do it and I have no resource, but I can make something out of nothing? So those are the things that we need to we need to teach, and I believe that's one of my successful elements. Fifth is respect culture and trauma. Again, goes back to respect culture. I don't judge people. I judge people by their action. I don't care where you came from. I don't care what color your skin. I don't care what religion you are, providing that it's a good religion. You know, if it doesn't hurt people and it's not judgmental, I respect that. And trauma. Not everybody has a battle mind. People have different breaking points. You know, some people may have a stronger breaking point, and some people could be hurt inside, but you'll never show it from the outside. So you always have to have that human touch. You always have to tend to trauma, and that's something that we don't do often. Six, lead with compassion, not by ego. Now that's a hard one. It took me a long time to try to figure that out, but you don't have to lead standing, you don't have to lead on a hill. Sometimes you have to take a knee next to the person and take that person's hand, and taking that person's hand and taking the knee and looking at that person is leading by example, because it says that you're human. So think about that. You don't have to be on the top. Just take a knee and talk to that person or talk to that group of people. So that's what it means. And lastly, train, reflect, and improve. The Army has this system called after action review. But I say train, reflect, and review. Train the way you think you want to succeed, and then take a pause, and then reflect on it, and then improve it. Because when we train, it may not be the best training. You have to reflect on it and say, you know, is what we're doing the best thing? Does it have care, compassion, and then improve upon it? So for those who are preparing for a career in homeland security and management, this is what I'll say: stay adaptable, lead with integrity, and don't be afraid to follow the calling, even if it leads you somewhere unexpected. The path may be twisted, but the mission stays true. With that said, I would love to hear your thoughts, your questions, and your reflections. Let's make this a conversation. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dennis. That's been so insightful and also inspiring. So, who wants to be first? So, yeah, first, big round of applause, right? So, hands up. Very good. Who wants to go first? Oh, there is. We have a question on the chat from Birgit, our friend from Germany, and also if I can ask as a courtesy to Dennis, our guest, and everybody else, if you just can use one sentence to identify or introduce yourself as you are dropping your question. So, Birgit. Dear Dennis, first of all, I have great respect for your work and experience. Thank you for sharing it with us here. In your work with the Salvation Army, you have operated in high, complex urban environments, often marked by social fragmentation, information in, if I could see something like this, AI is in my way, information settlements and uneven access to services. How do you operationalize resilience in such contexts? Specifically, do you rely on spatial zoning, community-based triggers, or adaptive governance models to translate fragmented realities into coherent response architectures?
I'm going to have to break that question down, Doctor. So the first question is, how do we, can you
Yeah, it's
repeat
very
the first
conceptual.
question?
I know. Yeah, I do. So you operate in highly complex urban environments, often marked by social fragmentation, uneven access to services. How do you operationalize resilience in such contexts?
Okay, so resilience, how we operationalize that is, in the past, we haven't been collecting data on resilience. And the way we collect resilience is how fast do you bounce back from a disaster, right? That's what the definition of resilience. You get I know you get pushed down, how fast do you come up, and how quickly you get back into operational. One of the things we try to do is we work hand in hand with the California Office of Emergency Services. They have a program called Listos, Ready, and they go around to each of the communities and they build resiliency. And part of the resiliency is, to me, I believe resiliency starts from the lowest level, meaning an individual, you, and then it flourishes to the next group or the next higher up. So it starts with individual, family, neighborhood, community, district. Does that make sense? So in terms of resiliency, we want to create a resilient person. The way we try to metrics that, well, it's hard to do that because one day you feel like you're resilient. You feel like one day you can take on the world, then one day you don't want to take on the world. But you got to put mechanisms in place. You got to put things in place. So if we're talking about natural disasters, I think we can do that. But if we're talking about emotional disasters, because the reality is a disaster is when a person has a bad day and he goes into a church and he starts to hurt a lot of good people. That's a disaster. And that disaster was caused by one person who we thought was resilient. And then one day he had a turning point and then he couldn't deal with that, or she couldn't deal with that. So, good question. It's an evolving question. Don't have the silver bullet, but I think that it starts with yourself and it starts with the community. I hope I answered your question.
Great. And then thanks, Dennis. And then second part to Birgit's question is about models that you may be using. So Birgit is asking, do you rely, for example, on spatial zoning, community-based triggers, or adaptive governance models to translate fragmented realities into a coherent response architecture?
Okay, good question. And that's a little bit what we're trying to look at is the zoning part. California has a lot of challenges. My division, particularly, I have 3 zones. Just last week, the coastal zone was under had a high tide, high water warning, and what I have to do is I have to interface with the Office of Emergency Services on that coastal. They do have mapping, they do have communication, they do have systems in place out in the ocean and also along the coast that gives them that heads up warning. In terms of how we integrate with that, we are at that point now where we're looking at integrating our systems with them. Unfortunately, from a nonprofit perspective, uh, it is challenging to integrate any type of system with the government entity. So the government entity has to open that communication to us because it is their responsibility. But we are looking at ways we can have a common operating picture and integrate that. Now, with that said, again, I have a coastal, I have plains, and I have high mountains. So these 3 different and distinct geographical areas may not be in line or in sync at any given time. So that's one of my challenges. But Cal OES, California Office of Emergency Services, is the head proponent in ensuring that communication is transferred to all of the counties. I hope I answered that question.
Thank you. Thank you, Dennis. And yeah, Birgit says interesting. Thank you so much. Doug, you are next in line, Doug Jordan, but can you add a sentence about who you are, introducing yourself? And same for Dawn Hoyer. We have your question, but if you can add a self-introduction sentence, please, as well. While we are waiting for that, do we have anybody else? Would anybody like to speak up? Can also give you the mic. You don't have to type.
Good afternoon, Professor
Jessica,
Rodriguez.
go ahead.
Yes, and good afternoon, Dennis. So 20 years, I graduated from College of Aeronautics in New York City with a bachelor's in science and airport management. Living in New York City during the 9/11 attacks also profoundly impacted me as well, which is one of the reasons why I selected emergency management. I lost a lot of friends along the way and witnessed the tragedy firsthand. Those losses, pretty much devastated, the community that I lived in. But along with that, Hurricane Maria was one of the other destructions that really impacted, my life personally, and one of the reasons why I'm in this profession. Worked for health insurance for a very long time, for about 10 years doing business continuity, and here I am full circle back at aviation. I wanted to ask you, I hear you have kind of like similar background, going from the military and then going into the public sector. how did you navigate that whole culture shift, right? From going from the military, um, being in a command structure to like a civilian emergency management environment. Because I know there's a big difference there, right? Even though there's some practices that are like seamless, you can transfer them, but I would love to hear like how did you personally like make that shift?
That's a good question. Anytime you have a culture shift, especially from the military, because, and I'll use this terminology, there's a different type of personality in the military culture. We have that personality where we want to always try to get things done and we want things structured and we want, bottom line up front, boss, what is your task and purpose? And what is your vision statement? And then you go to a nonprofit, let's take a breath, let's relax. Let's understand things, let's talk to everybody, let's touch and feel and kumbaya. So I call that human dynamics. You guys got a class that's called human dynamics. I call it human emotional dynamics. As I get older, I learn how to take a breath and learn how to take it all in and just listen to the music for a little bit. So I read this book and it talked about sound and it talked about signal, how there's a lot of sound, like movement, a lot of background noise, and then you got to listen to the signal. I think once you listen to the signal, especially if whatever organization you're in, and you just find that nice signal that you're comfortable with, I think you can navigate because the question you ask is how do you navigate? You have different cultures in different organizations. You just have to listen to the signal, meaning what is the value you bring to that organization because you got to value yourself. When you work for an organization, you have to say to yourself, I'm bringing value, and how do I continue to maintain that value? And the way I do that is listen to the signal. Every day you wake up and you listen. It's almost you got to find your purpose and don't worry about all that other, distractors. You go in an organization and you listen to the signal and you find a purpose. And so I found my purpose in Salvation Army. There's a lot of things I don't agree with Salvation Army, but I learn the value of what they do, but I also find the value of what I do as well. And that's why I love my job. And then when I was in the military, I approach it as, I'm not a decision maker, but I have to do what I'm told to do, providing it's ethical, moral, and legal. Hope I answered your question.
You sure did. Thank you. You're
You're
very
welcome.
inspiring.
You're welcome.
Yes, you are. And thank you, Jessica, for the question and Dennis for the answer. Now we are coming to Doug's question. Doug is a doctoral candidate in communication. Speaking of communication, the importance of at Liberty University studying crisis communication. He is also a retired Army officer, PsyOps. Thank you for your service, Doug. And located in Tampa, Florida. So Doug's question is, how do you address providing services to non-English speaking communities? Are there opportunities to support your organization with research and lessons learned?
Yeah, doctor, I appreciate your service, and sounds like you've been around the same grounds that I've been to. PSYOP is psychological operations, also known as military information support operations, is what we call it nowadays. That question could be segmented, doctor, in one series or a couple of series, but culture and sensitivity is always something that I try to put ahead. Knowing a person's culture and how do you communicate it with and I won't say non-English speaking, but how do you communicate your thought, your emergency disaster to somebody who has a different priority? And I believe that if we, rather than focus on the indifferences and find out what the commonality is, an example would be, if I go to a tribe or a village, um, and the commonality is feeding, let me talk to a key communicator. Let me talk to a village elder or a group of people who have the same priorities and get them involved because I believe that getting the community involved, getting the natural leaders involved, and then finding a commonality could help in communicating those priorities. because I would not want to do something that is not vetted through the community or through local leadership, especially if there's a culture sensitivity with that. I hope I answered your question.
Perfect, thank you. And the next question is from Dawn Hoyer, and Dawn is a colleague here at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, currently Director of Imaging at IT Services. And Dawn was working in the Embry-Riddle Flight Department when 9/11 happened. So maybe you know each other from your time back in 2001. But Dawn's question is, a natural disaster is happening. When do you know or make the decision to get on site to offer assistance?
That's a good question. Also, all you guys have good questions. I'm going to tell you that. And we've talked about it.
Thank you.
A lot of us have the heart to just go. And I'm not going to talk about another nonprofit, another international nonprofit. They have a tendency of just going where the disaster is and never talk to like USAID or any of the FEMA. They just go, they feed. Uh, it the trigger for that or the condition for that always has to come from the authority. And when I say authority, I have 18 counties. Before I go into a disaster, I always take an assessment, but I also wait for California Office of Emergency Services, which is the proponent who oversees the emergency operations. They are the FEMA, but the state FEMA of California. So I want to make sure that I work hand in hand with them, but I also want to make sure I work hand in hand with the local jurisdiction as well. But fortunate for me, I have 20, 25 plus cores or churches throughout my operating environment. So I'm talking with the local churches in those respective disaster areas, and they're giving me feedback. They're giving me information. So we work constantly with them. We want to do this together as a team. We never want to do a one-off and try to go out there like the Lone Ranger and try to, I call it spotlight leadership. We don't want to do that. And there's other agencies that want to do that because that's how they get their spotlight. They take a lot of action photos and they put it on the net, and that's how they get their donations. We don't do that. We do the right thing. I hope I answered your question.
Thank you, Dennis, and Dawn for the question. Then next is Janice Amos, who is professor of the practice here at our college in history with the Department of Humanities and Communication. Her question is, with so many other organizations, and you addressed that, and federal agencies, how do you determine the leadership in an emergency?
It starts with the local level. So if you've taken ICS, Incident Command System, remember, we are a supporting agency. We're a non-faith-based agency. So we don't go in there and try to take the lead. We support the community. We support the leaders. But again, doesn't mean that we won't take the lead. If leadership needs to step in and there's an absence of leader, I'll step in and I'll make that decision. And I know that I'll make the right decision because my decision is based on being ethical, moral, and legal. I never have to question that.
Thank you, Dennis, and thanks, Janice, for the question. And then next is Courtney Allen, whom we are going to meet at the end of the occurrence. So she is our college's assistant director, I believe, or associate. I don't take pride in titles, as you know, but she is in charge of alumni relations for our college. So Courtney's question is, how can organizations, including Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, build cultures of resilience that prepare people to respond effectively to crises and contribute more meaningfully to emergency, disaster, and relief efforts?
Good question. I love that question because you know why I've been wanting to try to get students in my area to volunteer, especially university and college students. It doesn't to get them involved. It doesn't have to be a disaster. Let's start with something simple. Let's get a group of students together and say, first Saturday of every month between 9 o'clock to 1 o'clock, let's all meet down at the animal shelter and take care of them. Go feed them. Go bathe them. Help them. And that is in itself an incident. We're taking care of animals and then grow that one event into something, to the next level. Okay, now we're going to do emergency feeding. We're going to get involved. So get your students involved. Have them build their resume. Get them out of the classroom. Take theory. Take all this book knowledge. Now you want to apply it in the field, and then you go back and you say, okay, what I've learned and read in a classroom, does that make sense? And you go back and you write on your notes, no, that doesn't make sense. That's actually a little bit outdated, or it worked back in the days, or maybe we can fine tune it. That's what you call the art and science of academia. You're able to teach it and you're able to test it, and then you go back and you refine it. So even that small event, getting the students involved in small events does not have to be a big event. They can even, your next big event, let's say the air show. Get a whole bunch of volunteer students and say, I want us to work crowd control. Let's do 6 hours of crowd control maintenance. I want you to do internal, external, and outer. You do bags checks, you do the first aid, you do communications, that type of thing. Those are events. We are trying to prevent a disaster from happening. And a disaster does not have to be a nature causing event. It could be anything, like I just said. It could be that one person, a group of family. That could be a disaster, because to them, that's a disaster. For us, it's just a day to day. So something to think about.
Thank you, Dennis and Courtney. And Courtney is Associate Director of Alumni Relations for our college. So I
That's
tried
right.
to save it in my mind, but she's doing a great job. So you don't need great titles to do great jobs, right? So Monique Ray is next. So Monique is from our Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University alumni. She is, let me take a moment. She is with our university, Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. She is an alumna and also a staff member and U.S. Air Force Emergency Manager. So very good. So she says, thank you for your service, Dennis, to our country and in and out of uniform, and for sharing your experience and lessons with us. So if you can recall, we had a double whammy in 2020 in California with the fires and COVID, the Orange Day in California. What was your responsibility at that time, and how did your agency respond?
Yeah, so I was working right before COVID happened. We transitioned to creating vaccination centers, and we got out of the office and we went to various parts of the West Coast. We stood up the vaccine center in the Oakland Coliseum. We vaccinated anywhere between 8,000 to 9,000 people a day, and then we started to go do mobile vaccine centers. And when I say mobile, we went into the neighborhoods and we helped vaccinate between 300 to 500 people, and a lot of these places were at churches. And it was very interesting because some neighborhoods did not want to get vaccinated, and then some neighborhoods welcomed it. So there was a lot of learning to do and a lot of preparing and planning as well. And it also caused a lot of hysteria in our organization too, because some people in our organization did not want to get vaccinated. And I'll share this with you. I was very resistant. I was very skeptical about that. Being in the military, they give us a lot of vaccinations and shots, and we just take it. We salute the flag and move out. Well, I wasn't in the military. I was in the federal government, but I also knew that this was also something that was it was still being implemented. It still had a lot of testing to do, but the nation needed to move forward with it. So working for FEMA, I had to do what was I told to do, and that was to create and set up vaccination centers. And you have to do that with confidence, and you have to do that with trust. And that was part of my job, was to create and set up these vaccination centers, but also interface with the people that were getting vaccinated as well.
Very interesting. Thank you. And then next is Ashanti, an international student, I don't know what's going on with me today. So next is Ashanti, that was correct, but Ashanti is an interdisciplinary study student with minors in emergency services and in data analytics. Ashanti's question is, how are you gathering data to determine the most vulnerable communities? What are the greatest challenges to interpreting that data?
Yeah, good question. The California Health and Human Services and also local health and human services have these data as the vulnerable population. And so those are the tried and tested data, but it's always evolving. And then we use that data to try to identify what neighborhoods and what areas we need to go in, especially when it's blue sky. When I say blue sky, not a disaster, but the day-to-day where we go and feed them and help them with the social services, may it be food or may it be uh, vouchers for their power, their water, their gas, utilities, etc. So we work hand in hand. Again, the key is partnership. We don't do this alone. We also do this with the government and other nonprofit entities as well.
Thanks, Dennis. So next is Haroon. Haroon has completed Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University's Combating Human Trafficking classes. Thanks, Haroon. Very important. And also related to resilience and preventative effort. And Haroon has been following related webinars. Although Haroon has limited experience in emergency disaster sciences, Haroon is eager to learn more. Haroon's question regarding disaster and emergency management. How do you ensure that catastrophic or traumatic events do not affect your professional and personal life? So that's a question about first responder resilience.
So personal life, I think, when I go into a disaster, of course, it's going to affect me. So and that's where that, you gotta lead with compassion. You also got to lead with your heart. But I learned to also put things in perspective. We have a network of members who we can lean on when we need help. The Salvation Army, the uniformed personnel that you see, they're pastors. So if I have an issue, if I need help with something, and if I can't handle a stress point, I can talk to them. So that's one of the things we do. We try to help each other out, and we talk about it, and we pray. We pray a lot, and some organizations have that as part of their rhythm, their operational. And Salvation Army, we have a morning ritual and also a time where we pray, because we need to get centered and have balance. The other thing is, I noticed I heard that you're part of human trafficking, or you have interest in human trafficking. I also do have a lot of interest in human trafficking. So I network with organizations like UASI, the Urban Area Security Initiatives. They're throughout the country. Connect with them. And there's also a lot of nonprofit agencies that are focused on human trafficking. So if you want to volunteer and get into that conversation, I think that's a good start for you as well, because human trafficking and also emotional readiness, it ties hand in hand.
Very important. Thank you. Thank you, Dennis. And as we are slowly but steadily approaching the hour, number one, it's great to see that some networking and connection making and facilitating is taking place in the chat. That hasn't happened to that extent before. So I'm excited, because we also want to be a broker, right? Information, but then also contact broker and speaking of whole community, contribute to networking and connecting communities and community perspectives one to another. Now it's time for me to pass it on to Courtney Allen, our Associate Director for Alumni Relations of the Embry-Riddle Worldwide College of Arts and Sciences, and she will close us out. So therefore, I want to already say a big thank you once again, Dennis, for speaking. That's been so inspirational and insightful, and very important topics touched. Therefore, also thanks to all participants, and thank you for all the questions that you brought to the table. And then with that, don't go away, because next is Miss Courtney.
Thank you, Dr. Siedschlag. Thank you so much for sharing the time and for sharing your story and your insights with us, and for being mission ready. We were ready today, and it was evident in the chat based on the questions. It's always powerful when alumni can come back and pour into the community, because it reminds us just how powerful the Embry-Riddle experience is, and it goes beyond just graduation. So thank you to you again. Let me show dinners and hearts and hands and love once again. And to all of you who are on as well, whether you're an alumni or not, your being here is also indicative of the fact that you too are special to the Embry-Riddle community, and that your curiosity, your connection, and your shared commitment remain strong. So we thank you for that. For all of you who are alone, I do have a few things I'd like to share with you. And I'd like to invite you to think about how you'd like to contribute and share your stories with us. We want to hear from you. We want to know what incredible things you also have going on since you walked across the stage. And we want to invite you to stay connected. I'm putting in the chat some links for you to take a look at, to download, to share your story. But also, I want to personally invite you to our virtual homecoming, November 6th. It's going to be November 6th at 9 to 10 p.m. Here is the link in the chat. Please go ahead and register. We want to also share some other things that are going on, not just within the College of Arts and Sciences, but within our worldwide community as well. So feel free to click the links, to share your story, to stay connected, but also join us on November 6th. If you are in town, there are a host of activities taking place on the Daytona Beach campus that you're welcome to participate in as well. But for our virtual community, we would like to show some celebratory efforts as well to celebrate our centennial. 100 years is nothing to take light. We're excited about being resilient, right? There have been a lot of schools that closed down and didn't make it. So 100 years is something that we want to celebrate, and we want you to be a part of this one. Thank you, Dean, for the opportunity. Thank you to all of you, and we hope to see you all continuously on the next Resilience Room.
Thanks, Courtney. And once again, big thank you, Dennis, for being an alumni who gives back and engages. It was so great to have you. Stay safe, be good, and hope to see you again soon. Thank you. Bye-bye. Take care.
Thank you. You got my email. There's a question. Feel free to reach out to me. I travel the East Coast as well. I look forward to meeting each and every one of you guys. And good luck. Thank you, Doctor. Thank you, Courtney. Blessings to all of you. Great. I'll hang out here if anybody has questions.